Welcome back to the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Big news this week in baseball. CC Sabathia, a first ballot Hall of Famer, got a really high percentage of the votes, too. I think that surprised a lot of folks. He'll go in with the New York Yankees logo on his cap instead of the Cleveland C. He said that's his preference. Start looking at guys that might be able to go into the Hall of Fame for the Indians/Guardians. I think Omar Vizquel is a definitive not going to make it because of all of his stuff off the field. Kenny Lofton, to me, is a very interesting guy. It looks like he's missed out on the traditional path to get in. What do you guys think about Kenny Lofton? A, should he be a Hall of Famer? And B, will he be a Hall of Famer?
I think he should be, and I think he will be eventually. Now, he's on the ballot. So they used to be called the Veterans Committee, and now they call it the Contemporary Era Committee. There's like 3 different committees, and they rotate when they vote. That's how we've seen guys in those committees like Harold Baines get in. Dave Parker is getting in this year from that group. I think there was another player that's getting in this year from that group, too, or maybe it's a manager. I can't remember. But to me, Kenny Lofton, when you look at his overall body of work, to be fair, he's a borderline case. If you really look,
he is a borderline.
Now,
guy.
he should not have been off the ballot in the first year. That was ridiculous.
That's what surprised me, Bull.
What hurts Kenny Lofton is that after age 31, 32, or whatever, he played a long time, and his career was really so. He had a lot of years at the end where he was kind of a mediocre or worse player.
I mean, compiling numbers at the end.
Exactly. Yep. And I heard somebody say, I heard Jim Duquette, I think, say the other day that the reason Andrew Jones hasn't gotten in yet, and I think he will next year, but the reason Andrew Jones hasn't gotten in because he was great until he was 30, and then he went off a cliff.
Right.
He said, if Andrew Jones had retired at age 30, he would have gotten in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
I think Kenny Lofton retired at 33, he would have gotten in the Hall of Fame. They shouldn't be penalized for that.
I agree. They're still good enough to be major leaguers.
I think if Kenny Lofton had had 2 more prime years, he'd be in. So he's right on the borderline. But I think what we've seen over recent years in these contemporary era committees, so the contemporary era committees are former players, Hall of Famers. What we've seen is they are continuing in these groups, like the writers, to not vote in the steroid guys.
Right.
Instead, they voted in guys who maybe didn't get enough run on the ballot because maybe they were borderline, but now they're thought more highly of because they didn't take steroids in the steroid era.
They're almost rewarded because they were clean.
And in my opinion, and I know Dave Parker and Harold Baines played before Kenny Lofton, but when I think of great baseball players, to me, Kenny Lofton is a better baseball player than Harold Baines and Dave Parker. And I think those guys are both excellent ball players. I think Kenny Lofton's a little better than those guys.
Well, his defense adds to it.
Yeah,
like
certainly.
If you're just a hitter, that's half of a resume. Kenny Lofton was a A-plus defender for his entire career.
Now, it's pointless for today. I would argue that it's more than half your resume because I personally wouldn't vote for a guy who's just a defensive guy.
No, I get that.
Yeah. It's a total package.
But there's guys that are in that were just defensive players.
Yes.
Ozzie Smith was a great defensive player.
Yes, but he was the whole package, as you say. And I think eventually, I saw the ballot. He's on the ballot, I think, in 27. And everybody on this ballot is a Hall of Fame caliber player, in my opinion. So it might take some time, but I do think Kenny will eventually get in.
Kenny was a prototypical leadoff hitter. In his
when that mattered.
When that mattered. Yeah. And I don't know if he's dinged a little bit because he wasn't a power hitter in the era of such monster power numbers, some of them steroid inflated. He's top 10 all-time in WAR among center fielders.
That's what does it for me.
Yeah, he's
top 10 all-time.
He has a career WAR of 68. Now, I think the defense inflates that. The defense kind of inflates the WAR numbers a little bit. But I think he's, of all the players with 600 stolen bases and 600 extra base hits, he's the only one not in the Hall of Fame. I don't think he's fringe. I think he's absolutely a Hall of Famer. He's played for half the league, so I'm curious to see what he chooses on his cap if he ever does get it.
Got to be Cleveland.
I would think so.
He had 3 different stints with the Guardians, Indians ball for
I think he's a slam dunk. I'm disappointed in the writers that
I am too. I thought they missed this one big time.
Yeah,
I thought they just missed. And I agree with both you guys. He should be in. I'm more, I think, with Bull. I think what everybody looks to the power numbers. I don't think that's fair because not everybody in baseball is a power hitter. It wasn't his game. Not only was he the prototypical leadoff hitter, but I went back because I wasn't sure how many teams he played for. 17-year career, 16 full seasons. He made 11 trips to the playoffs. Like Rickey Henderson, who was the ultimate table setter in baseball history, he led his teams to the postseason. Not only did he lead 11 of his 16 seasons and in the playoffs, he was the guy setting the table for a lot of those teams. He had 3 different tenures with the Indians, and in all 3 tenures, he helped them get to the playoffs, which is astonishing. He led San Francisco to the playoffs, the Cubs to the playoffs, the Yankees to the playoffs, the Dodgers to the playoffs. Now, some of those were later years.
Well, but I'll say this. When he was on the Cubs, and obviously that was before I lived here, I remember, because I didn't have this intimate relationship with him that Indians fans would have, but I remember thinking, and I'm glad you brought it up, he was so impactful on that Cubs team. He was the playoffs.
Impacts winning.
I loved watching him in the playoffs because I just remember going, I know what this guy's going to give you. I saw it in Cleveland. Even when he was traded to the Braves, he was that guy in Atlanta. He helped get Atlanta to the playoffs. The Marquise Grissom thing, I wish the Indians never would have done that. I don't get it. I was glad he came back. I'm glad we got to see him. 6-time All-Star, 4-time Gold Glove winner. 5 times he led the American League in stolen bases. Now, obviously, stolen bases are coming back into vogue. But they were, after he was done playing, they became a non-entity. But when you look at his numbers, and he had 622 stolen bases. Guys, he averaged 48 stolen bases a year. Here's why that is overlooked, in my view. That's like giving a player 48 extra doubles. You know, 48. Now, most of his steals were of second. I'm sure some of them were of third, too. He stole home base famously. Home plate. But I just think that when you put it all together, 2,400 hits, the 300 lifetime career batting average. I also like, on Baseball Reference, you can do player comparisons. I don't know if you did that, but I did that. I think the most appropriate one was Tim Raines. But they list 10 guys that are similar players to this. Ichiro and Ken Griffey were also listed as comparables to Kenny Lofton.
But Tim Raines, when I think of him, I think of Tim Raines.
I do too.
They're the same type of player.
I think that's the closest one.
Careers.
I think he was kind of a poor man Ichiro. You know, he wasn't quite
not quite
at that
Ichiro.
level.
Raines was a left fielder. Kenny was a center fielder.
A center fielder, roamed it with grace, and was one of the best defensive center fielders.
I think eventually he'll get in. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I think he will.
He'll be in, by the way, in a couple of weeks, and I'm going to interview him for a piece I'm doing upstairs for the Cleveland Sports Awards. They're bringing in 4 players from the '95 team.